What's up, heathens? How y'all doing? Today we have another interview, this time with Brazen Atheist. Brazen, or I don't know if you want me to call you by your first name. I know that you kind of have your blog under your first name.
Yeah, pretty much. I write under my first name and all that stuff, so that's cool. So Erin works.
Okay, so everybody say hi to Erin. We're going to be talking about her relationship with religion when she was younger, and then, what made her start questioning her faith, and then eventually what got her to become an atheist, what convinced her. So we're going to be talking about that today. If you will, please go down below, check out Erin's links that are down in the description. She's got a bunch of books on Amazon that you can go and look at. So I've got the newest one, so y'all should check out all of her books though. But if you're interested in any of this, then please stay tuned. All right, so hi Erin, how you doing today?
Good, how are you?
Oh, I'm doing awesome. I got my son for the weekend and we had a Nerf fight today, so that's always good.
Sweet.
Yeah,
Sweet.
so you want to start off by telling us, like, what was your relationship with religion like in in your younger years, I guess, like your childhood?
Well, I grew up in Orange County, and I'm the last of 6 kids, so we were Catholic, obviously. Birth control was, frowned upon, so that's pretty much how I came to be. But by the time I came around, Catholicism was kind of on the outside of my life. It was sort of like on the periphery. It was like weddings and funerals and holidays. It wasn't really a big deal. So like I was baptized, but I never made communion. So when I did go to church, I was the one that like didn't get to get up and get their cracker and wine. And, I always felt like, okay, everybody's looking at me. I'm the one going to hell sitting here, I'm like 6. And, so it was an irritant to me. It was kind of an annoyance. It was something that sort of was there. We prayed, get on your knees and pray, and we said grace and things like that before meals, when we had family in town. But other than that, it wasn't really a huge part of my life. It was like an irritant, it was just a pain in the ass. It was something I had to go to church on Sundays, or at least wait for my friend to get home from church if I wanted to play. So, it was really kind of, I didn't really think a lot about it because it wasn't a huge part of my life.
Okay. So I take it that you really didn't take part in any kind of religious activities, like Bible studies or youth groups?
Sunday school, I went to Sunday school a few times, but, I asked a lot of questions, and I was a bit of a smart ass. Everybody would like to tell me how, bright I was, and until I wouldn't shut up. And then all of a sudden they're just like, dude, it's enough. So I wasn't super welcome in Sunday school. I'm like, why is that guy bleeding? How come we're all bad? Why did God drown the whole world? So they don't really like those questions, I'm like, how come, God isn't feeding the kids in Africa, because you get I grew up in the 80s, so I got the standard, there's kids in Africa starving or whatever. And so eat your food. And so I'm thinking, but are they not praying? Like, isn't God supposed to help them? And then I started thinking, well, why is God bringing me a, new My Little Pony, but there's still kids starving in Africa? I'm like, you can keep the pony, dude. Like, they got flies on their face. Maybe he should be helping them instead of the little white girl in Orange County. But so I had a lot of questions. I wasn't really invited very often to religious activities.
Well, was there any certain question that got like a really bad response from people, I guess, that you can remember?
Yeah, when I started questioning why, because you're always told to pray like for your family and things like that. And I always felt it was really selfish, because when you would go and watch like the evening news and you see that there's a lot of suffering going on, I couldn't reconcile that in my head, because I'm like, are they just bad because they don't believe, they're not Catholic? And I'm like, if they're not Catholic and they're going to hell, I'm like, God's kind of a dick, like I was taught morals and to be nice to people and to care and to not steal and to not lie and to be a good person and to, care about your fellow human beings. And it kind of felt like, God didn't do that. So I found religion and my own morality conflicting. And so those kinds of questions are what really pissed people off. And then what made me really suspicious was the fact that they wouldn't answer my questions. Because if I asked something like, why is the sky is blue? You can give me an answer to that. They didn't get pissed. Even if they didn't know, they were still able to come at me, with, hey, we can find out, or I don't know, or there's, reason. But it was never just, hey, don't ask questions. But when it came to God and religion, it was always, you need to stop asking questions. You're going to piss off God. And I'm like, okay, but you're like not making your case here, because now I really think he's a dick. How is he just why am I just expected to accept all this without any real answer? I'm like, that just seems kind of mean. So that was my thinking as a kid, but I was different than my brothers and sisters. I'm very removed from them. They're 15 to 9 years older than me. My mom actually did start taking birth control after my brother. So that's why there's a 9-year gap. And then when she quit taking it right before my parents separated is why I became alive. So they had more of going to church every Sunday and more of that really heavy duty religion. They were really into Catholicism. They all did all their rituals and they all got to eat the cracker. It was just by the time I came around, it was sort of like, why bother? And then my parents were getting divorced. So, getting divorced and being Catholic is not a good thing either. So by the time I was around, I didn't really have it jammed down my throat like the rest of my siblings did.
Okay.
So kind of lucky in that respect, I guess. Sort of.
Well, I'm wondering, because you kind of led into this a little bit, what made you start questioning, like, your faith in God?
I don't think I ever really had any faith because it just didn't make sense. By the time I really started thinking about it, I just couldn't square it in my head. And then the real catalyst, I think, when I really started to understand that I really thought it was bullshit, was Santa Claus. And I actually, I wrote a piece for the Freedom from Religion Foundation's newsletter called Free Thought Today. It's called God is a Jerk. And I talk about how I grew up with religion, why I thought it was weird. But I talk about when my mom one year forgot to, I think I was 5 or 6, she forgot to put out Christmas presents. And so I woke up Christmas morning and there's no presents under the tree. And so my mom confessed to me that, Santa was a real man, but now it's a game we play and, all this kind of stuff. And I felt really like deceived and lied to. But I understood pretty early that Santa, you either be good or you don't get your presents, right? So there's some old man watching you, making sure you behave. And if you do, you get rewarded. And once I kind of applied that to the concept of God, I thought, well, if this is a made up thing to get me to, not talk back and, be a brat, then maybe God is too. And once I started, and of course, it took a while because I was a little kid. So after I got over the Santa thing, I, opened my presents and everything was cool. But once I took that concept and applied it to religion and God and what I was taught, I was like, but this seems like they kind of parallel, could kind of be the same thing. What if this is a made up mechanism also, to get people to not be, assholes? So that was, I would say Santa Claus. And I've said that before on Twitter and, got made fun of, but for reals, that was kind of that was just the door into critical thinking and to applying the same things that I had just learned, that my parents could lie to me, number one, and, that they will manipulate you in order to alter your behavior.
Right. Yeah. And so when did that, what did you first tackle, I guess, after the Santa Claus situation? When you went to religion and you started applying it there, did you continue with the questions that you were asking when you were younger, or did you just sort of work that out on your own?
Yeah, I continued asking questions, but I got shut down so much that I just stopped asking questions. And so, I pretty much worked it out on my own. I realized pretty quick, actually in the same piece, I talk about how I discovered my own morality. I had done something really bad. I threw my brother's cat in the pool and I felt really, really bad. I just remember feeling like devastated that I could do something like that. And at that point, I realized that I didn't really give a shit what God thought about what I did. I gave a shit about what I did because I felt really freaking horrible. It was one of those, I don't know if you've probably done something really bad and you're like, holy crap, I really wish I hadn't done that. And that was really my revelation when I decided that there was no point in asking questions because I just got in trouble for it. But I also knew that I just didn't need that. But at that point, I was still a little kid and I really I knew that I had to play the game. I had to pretend. So I didn't really tell anybody and even at that point, I didn't know what an atheist was. So I didn't know I was an atheist. I just knew that I wasn't buying that. And I didn't actually identify as an atheist until way later, much later.
Okay. Now, the cat's okay, right? Maybe not now.
I mean, she was like 20 already, which is what made it like 10 times worse because it was seriously like the most pathetic. I can still see her like wet and out of pool. It was horrid. It was so bad. I mean, she was okay. But it scared her and no, it was a rotten, terrible, awful thing to do. And I was just like irritated. And she was sitting by the pool and I just knocked her in. Not hard, but just thought, I don't even know what I thought, but yeah, she's okay. Yeah, she survived. She was upset and, wasn't my friend after that, but
I can just imagine that look on the cat's face, like, well, I'm not getting near you again.
It was really well because she was so old too. So no, it was bad. Princess, I remember.
Okay. So what kind of, when you were questioning like your faith and not really realizing that you were an atheist, what kind of guided you in that direction? Like, was there any certain thing in particular, or did you just hear the word one day and you were like, oh yeah, I'm that?
Well, I heard the word all the time. As a Catholic, you know the word atheist. You're devil worshippers and baby eaters and bad people, murderers, serial killers, everything bad you can imagine. That's what atheist meant to me. So yeah, I knew what the word meant. I thought I knew what the word meant. I'm going to say not until I actually joined Facebook. So maybe 2009, I think it was, when I really started to see it. And I started to see some pages. The Friendly Atheist was one of the first. And I started to, I guess actually before that, I had a nephew who was 8 years old and he was diagnosed with cancer at 2. And before he passed, and especially right when he went into hospice and, all that stuff, everybody was praying. My whole family was praying. And so that was the last time that I really prayed. And I didn't really believe, but I thought, you know what, fuck it. There's nothing, I can't do anything else. So I was helpless, right? And so I did try to pray at that point. And after he passed, obviously it was traumatic. And after he passed, that's when I started to get into science books. And that's when I really started to ask questions about the afterlife and all that kind of stuff. I started with a book about, I want to say it's called The Science of the Soul, but it was basically a physics book that was talking about whether there was proof of a soul. And the conclusion it came to was, no, there's really not. And then I read a book by Mary Roach called Spook, which was also kind of skeptic driven, and it addressed a lot of those different issues. And that was when I really started to identify with the word atheist and realized that that's what I was. So, and then of course that leads into, I think Pendulet's books after that were my next ones. And then, Dawkins and Harris and all that stuff that follows. So, okay. But that was, I think, so I'm going to say when my nephew passed is when that's when I really seriously started studying it. Before, I just kind of considered it like a coping mechanism, and whether or not I believed it or not didn't matter because it just was what people were. But I didn't actually really consider what the word meant until I started researching and studying and reading. So,
okay. So I guess you could say that when you finally came to the conclusion that you were an atheist, it was more like a light switch sort of event and not really all that prolonged.
That I finally understood what the word meant and that's what I was. That was kind of a light switch Yeah, I don't think it was prolonged in that. And I think it was because I always knew that I didn't believe, from when I was a little kid, I knew I didn't believe. I just didn't identify that way. I certainly didn't tell anybody because I knew telling somebody that I didn't believe in God was going to be a problem, which is actually, I just experienced that pretty significantly a few days ago. So yeah, no, I don't think it was prolonged. It was more the realization that it was okay and it was reality and that there were other atheists out there, that I wasn't like, this only person thinking that there was no God.
Mm-hmm.
So
I have to say one of the biggest hurdles that I had to overcome was realizing that it was okay not to believe in a God. And so it kind of sounds like that was a hurdle for you, is just realizing that it's actually okay to be an atheist, because that doesn't mean that you're some kind of like immoral baby eater, right?
Yeah, I felt like it was okay to say I was an atheist. I knew that I didn't. I figured whether it was okay to believe or not was a moot point because I simply didn't believe. So it wasn't like I made the decision that it was okay to not believe. It was that I just didn't believe. I tried to believe, and it just wouldn't work. So it had to be okay because I couldn't change. It's like having freckles. Like I can't change them; they just are what they are. I mean, and I've actually tried. My big brother told me pickle juice will remove freckles. So anybody watching, it totally doesn't work. It makes you smell bad. That's it. That's all it does. But that's my point. It was something that I couldn't change about myself because I tried. Especially when I was going through this stuff with my nephew, I tried. I tried to believe. I really wanted to believe because I felt like if I believed, maybe that would help. Maybe anything would help. Because like I said, that was a prolonged traumatic experience over 6 years of treatments and up and downs and not knowing what was going to happen. So that was the last time I really tried to believe, but I just wasn't able to because there was nothing there that convinced me. There was I've read a couple of deconversion stories, and so I understand the process that people go through, but I'm not sure that I actually went through that process myself that way, other than just really trying to believe and never really. I don't know if you're probably familiar with Dan Barker. Of the Freedom from, yeah. And so I'm reading his book, actually. He signed it, which was really cool. And he talks about the slow progression of a loss of faith. And I just didn't have that same thing, because he actually believed. He spoke in tongues at some point. There was never a point where I felt the Spirit of God. I just never felt that. And everybody's like, you're going to feel it. And I'm like, I don't feel it. I hit puberty and I felt something, but that wasn't God. So.
Yeah, when I was a Christian, I thought that I felt like the whole Spirit of God thing, but it was always like just the heightened emotion that you get, like whenever you get emotional, kind of thing. So it was never really the life-changing sort of situation with me, but I did find myself trying my hardest to like be religious. Like I would go back to church, I would go to Bible studies and youth groups. I guess when you were really trying to believe, I guess yours was more of a sort of a personal journey rather than forcing yourself into activities that would help you believe, right?
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. And at the, I started as a stripper at 18. So when my nephew was diagnosed, I was 21. And then when he was really going through that, I was in the middle of dancing. So it would have been kind of weird, for me to like put on a church dress and go to church. So I never really considered actually getting into the religious aspect of it. For me, once I really, like, when I was a kid and I was jealous of everybody else going and getting the cracker and the wine, I didn't understand what it meant. I knew that everything revolved around this bleeding guy on the cross, but I didn't really know, what those rituals were about. So once I found out that it was like blood and flesh, and I'm like, this is fucking weird. Like, who are we, Charles Manson? Like, this is not, like, how is this okay? People freaked out when the Donner Party ate each other. I don't understand why this is cool. So when it came to actually like the religion and the dogma and that stuff, like, I called bullshit on that from Jump Street. Once I knew what it was like, so, but when it came to actually trying to believe for me, it was the more generalized concept of God, like, he's the universe, he's love, he's out there looking for you. And, the trappings around religion is moot, doesn't matter. You just need to believe in something. And you just, you need to pray to something and he'll listen. And that was that. So the actual, like the rituals and the communities and the actual churches, I blew that off pretty early, just because it was so ridiculous. Because it was like all these, I read a lot as a kid. If you can't tell, I'm a touch nerdy. And so, I read all these fantasy stories. You got Velveteen Rabbit, and, I grew up with Beatrice Potter and all those stuff. And so, you're told to not believe in fairy tales. And then you walk into church and they're like, yeah, this is all true. And I'm like, you guys are full of shit, obviously. How can I not believe in Benjamin Bunny, but I'm supposed to believe in Jesus Christ and, all this other stuff that is very obviously doesn't make any sense. So, but I did definitely pray and try at that point in my life, I was definitely trying. But yeah, it would have been weird to, go from the strip club to the, Catholic church down the street.
Right. So I grew up.
That really happened.
Yeah, I'm sure it did. See, I'm a really bad ex-Catholic because when I was a Catholic, I just listened and believed. Like, I didn't question like my parents or elders or anything like that. They told me that Jesus existed and, he was the Son of God and he did all these things. And I was just like, oh, okay. And can I go and play with like my toys now? Like I was kind of in the same boat as you, and the idea that it really wasn't all that of a deeply held religious belief to me. It was just kind of one of those things that I accepted as like, this is reality, and it's I didn't think one way or another about it. But the way that I was a bad Catholic was that I did not know, like, as I was, when I was a Catholic, which I got out of the Catholic faith when I was like, I want to say when I was like 9 or so. It was just after my parents divorced. I did not know about the whole literal turn, like the communion way for turning to flesh and like it's literally blood and all that. Like, I didn't get that far into the Catholic faith when I was a kid. So like I grew up Catholic, but I was a very bad Catholic when it came to like the actual theology of Catholicism.
Yes, I think they do that on purpose. I really do, because I can't remember what I responded to the other day, but somebody was talking about Bible verses, and I was like, obviously I haven't read the Bible. I grew up Catholic. You know what I'm saying? Because they deliberately don't tell you that stuff, I think. Because once you compare it to anything else that you've learned in your life, it's objectively weird. But I was always, I questioned everything. That was just sort of my MO when I was a kid. I was, like I said, I was really kind of a pain in the ass. I was not the kid you wanted to babysit. So, once I got older, that was when I don't know, what is the age of reason? 6, 7? That's when I started to think that it was weird. But right at first, when I was 5 and 6 and, we did Easter and went to like Christmas Mass and church and all that stuff, I totally accepted it 100% too, just like I did Santa Claus. I mean, this is what your parents tell you. You believe them, So I think we were probably pretty much in the same boat that way.
Yeah.
Because I definitely believed it. I mean, on Christmas when I was a little kid, I said, "Happy birthday, Jesus." That's what we do. So.
Yeah. Well, so after you figured out that you were an atheist and you felt okay, claiming that position, what was the reaction like of your friends and family?
Oh, well, I didn't tell anybody because I knew that there was still a stigma around it. And especially because that was so close to after my nephew passing, the last thing that I was going to do was talk to my family about it, or to give any inkling. I knew that was really taboo, because even though I had educated myself, I knew that they had not. And when it came to my friends, I mean, it just wasn't a topic that came up. I didn't actually become vocal about being an atheist until really just a few years ago. Like really only 2 or 3 years ago, when religion actually became, when it interfered with my life. And that was when I decided that, it's not fair to other atheists for me to stay in the closet. If I have enough courage to come out and to, help pave the way as you and, so many other thousands and millions of people have, then I think it's important. I think it's important to speak out, to provide support to other atheists. And like you said, to let people know that it is okay to, how many people out there are still pretending or, hoping when they might actually feel better to just admit it and move on. And, instead of trying to pretend to believe. So
you're telling me that it was more taboo for you to be an atheist rather than like a stripper?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that the issue there is money. I think that's what it is.
So, if you made money from being an atheist, would it have been okay?
Well, maybe. Who knows? Because, that's considered taboo and immoral too. But my family, they were upset about it. I have 3 big brothers. So they were kind of like, they told me they were worried about my safety and all that kind of stuff. And there were, a couple of nasty things thrown around here and there. But, when one of them needed a car payment, all of a sudden they were pretty cool with it. So, and my dad is self-employed and actually has a really successful business and, leans to the right. And so, he's motivated by money. So in fact, I think we had excuse the phrase, come to Jesus moment when I told him, Dad, you don't want to work for anybody either. And this is what I can do. And you're not going to be getting a call from me asking for my rent anymore. And so they really accepted that. When I told them that I was an atheist really only a couple years ago, there were some really vile things said to me, straight to my face, just some really vile, horrid things. And I just kind of, the typical things, questioning your morality, that you're going to hell and, all this stuff. And I'm like, but you've known me for my whole life. And that, I donate to charity. I donate to blood regularly. I don't steal. I'm generally a good person. I do for others. I'm like, that person hasn't changed. The only thing that changed is that I've told you that I don't believe in God and that I have never really believed in God. That's the only thing that's changed. And yet now I'm a terrible, awful person. And it's like, but I made a pie for your church bake sale. You know what I'm saying? Even though I don't believe in God, like how I wasn't a bad person then. Why am I a bad person now?
Well, I'm kind of curious, what's the most absurd thing that you've heard, like as far as an accusation towards you? Maybe not necessarily from your family members or anything like that, but I guess I'm just talking about in general.
I think the morality thing, I think that's the most absurd thing. Because like I said, I've always done and obviously some people may think dancing is immoral. I don't, if only because, we're all naked. This is just in a different context. So, and I don't find sexuality, particularly bad if it's done, consensually and, all that stuff around it. So I don't consider that immoral, but I can see how some people would. But even people that accepted that and then find out that I haven't believed in God or I don't believe in God, and then all of a sudden decide that I'm a bad person, that's really that really blows me away because my actions haven't changed. I'm still the same person. But that's really the most absurd thing because I've my morality hasn't changed.
Well, what I've noticed with the whole I guess sexuality of it is that they really don't like it when people are openly okay with like their sexuality or anything along those lines. It always has to be hidden. As long as it's hidden, you're fine. But if you're like open and okay with it, then it becomes immoral. That's what it kind of seems like to me.
Yeah. Well, and I'm trying to think of which chapter it was. It's a chapter where I go over the objective facts of Adam and Eve and, how nudity was cool until, of course, they ate the apple, which he kind of baited her with. It was really kind of a shitty setup. And the snake kind of got the short end of the stick, too, there. But it wasn't bad until then. And how does that change? I think that they really set it up to make it as a control mechanism. It's a really effective way to control people is to control their sexuality, build guilt and shame around it. And, it's a wonderful manipulation tactic. And especially when it comes to, subjugation and objectification of women, because the burden always falls on the girl. Mm-hmm. When it comes to sexuality and being overly sexual, for sure, or just being openly sexual,
Oh yeah, and it's definitely prevalent in almost every denomination of Christianity now. You constantly see these sermons where the pastors or the preachers will compare, or blame women for causing unclean thoughts in men and all this other stuff. So
yes, as if it's all our fault, for sure. I mean, I'm definitely guilty as charged. That's kind of my whole job. But I think it's absolutely designed that way. It's definitely designed that way. And it's certainly not just Christianity either. I mean,
oh no. I mean, I guess I was just talking about religion in general.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm kind of curious, looking back on your time being more religious or trying to find your faith. What differences do you have now? Like, are there any differences in your personality or your politics or anything like that versus, between you now versus you in the past?
Politically speaking, I've become aware that we don't have enough representation, and there's obviously far too much religion in government. I think it's kind of crept its way in and then really, started rocking and rolling the last couple of years. There's really been a lot of religion that's been, trying to make its way into our laws. And that's one of the reasons why I became a member of Freedom from Religion Foundation, and why it's, mainly the charity that I support. So that was a big one. But changing, I think I feel relieved now that I could just let it go and that I could stop trying, that I could stop wondering about it and just kind of put that question to bed. And to stop feeling like, I need to do that to fit in, or to not get yelled at or to keep friends. Now I just kind of, if you don't accept me for who I am, it's time to let you go. So I think that's a big change. So it's a big sense of relief, actually, to not have to hide that anymore.
Yeah. I know that the biggest thing that changed for me when I stopped being stopped trying to be religious was the immense amount of guilt that I felt. I felt that, lift up off my shoulders, and it was a very freeing feeling. And I always felt I always remember feeling a lot better after I realized that I was an atheist and that was okay. So, and I'm wondering, what is your best advice for anybody that's questioning their religion or anything like that?
Read. That's what that's pretty much my advice for everything. I would say that reading really provided a lot of source of comfort for me. Because it was just information. Once I started, with a couple of books here and there, I just started devouring physics and quantum mechanics. And, I started to learn as much about our world as I could. And once I had that knowledge, it was like you said, it was a relief. I would say to just seek knowledge and to explore different things. Explore humanism. That was a big one for me, because I did wonder. I was like, well, God, if I don't believe in God, do I really have, are they right? Do I need that belief, or am I going to start, going out and stabbing people on the street, or, and so exploring humanism was a big one for me. I would just say, get out and explore and read, talk to people,
Well, I know that you mentioned a lot of books earlier that you read as you were, questioning what you believed and really figuring yourself out. What would be the one book that you would suggest to somebody?
Oh,
I know that's got to be hard.
I hate it when people ask me one book. Actually, in my latest book, Expose Yourself, in the back, I have a bibliography that actually lists some of my favorite books. So give me just a second. Actually, I'm going to grab it and give myself a little refresher. The Unpersuadables by Will Storr was a good one, because it explains why people believe what they believe. A Brief History of Time by Stephen Hawking, obviously, gives you a good overview, a layman's overview of the physics, how our universe works. God is Not Great, obviously, Hitchens. Who doesn't love? Well, I guess there's plenty of people that don't love Hitchens, but I do. The God Delusion, obviously. Sex and God: How Religion Distorts Reality by Daryl Ray was another really eye opener for me, because that was actually, I had a lot of inspiration from his book, because that was what made me realize how much of atheism and religion and all that stuff actually tied in to my job. Because I could go back and look at all the customers and stuff that, I mean, it was a big thing. There's so much guilt and shame around sex that, that was a topic that came up fairly often. And I realized that was guilt, shame, religion or not, was a motivator, sometimes with customers, or an excuse or a reason behind things. Demon Haunted World, Science is a Candle in the Dark by Carl Sagan was another one that really led. And one of my favorites is The Skeptic's Guide to the Universe. That one is they don't really touch on atheism, I think, by design, but it's a great way to learn how to get accurate information and to filter your biases and to understand how cognitive dissonance works. Mm-hmm. And so it's a great book to debunk all sorts of bullshit. So, which is a lot of other topics I cover in my book, psychics and things like that. I didn't realize that I was actually using cold reading techniques as a dancer until I read how cold reading works. And I was like, holy shit, I totally do that. I'm a psychic. So, but I read about conspiracy theories and things like that. And so a lot of those books helped me. And I decided to add them, at least little blurbs in the back, as recommended reading to people that read my book, so that they can continue to explore. Like I said, I'm a bit of a book nerd. So
right. No, that's totally okay. I mean, I have a lot of books. I haven't read them all. So I usually go with audiobooks, which is what I've actually got your newest book on, which I know you just said the title. I can't remember the title right now.
Oh, it's Expose Yourself.
Expose Yourself. That's right.
How to take risks, question everything, and find yourself.
Mm-hmm. I've started it, and I plan on finishing it, but I got it, and then I had a lot of work stuff going on. Plus, I had a lot of GE related stuff going on, so I had to put it down. But I am in the middle of it. Cool.
Yeah, I appreciate it for sure. I mean, I hope you like it. The other book too is Andrew Seidel's book, the Founding Myth. So that one is. It's funny because I talked to him at the FFRF convention, and it took me a while to get through his book because it's extremely analytical. It's very informative. You can definitely tell that he is a highly educated lawyer. So it's one of those books that you really need to read. And my book, you can smoke a joint, have a couple of beers and read my book, and it's no big deal. But with Andrew's book, it's important. And I think it's really important now. Because it really helps you understand why our founders didn't want religion to be included in our lawmaking.
Oh yeah, I've finished his book because I got your book right at the tail end of me finishing Andrew's book. And I of course, audio book kind of person for me, but I was listening to his book, and he did a wonderful job debunking the whole idea. But I do want to ask you, what's your reaction to Pastor Greg Locke, just outright burning his book?
Oh, burning his book? Oh, dude, he's obviously thirsty is what the kids use now, right? He's just trying to get attention. I mean, that guy is a douchebag of the highest order. So. Oh, yes, he is. And frankly, I was like, I saw that and I'm like, shit, how do I get him to burn my book? So, I'd take it as a compliment. You should. I know what prompted it was Andrew sent him a copy of his book for free. Oh, yeah. And he was like, I'm just going to burn this trash right here. And it's like, oh, okay. I don't know. It seems like now that it's been done, I don't want to be like copycat. So I'll have to find another Christian to troll, I guess. We'll find it. Maybe that SJ lady or Ray Comfort. I actually thought Ray Comfort was a joke when I first saw that. I was like, this guy's not real. And I think actually you've seen my Facebook page because I recognized you on it. And I think I put one of the first posts was something by him, and I was like, this guy's obviously a joke. And somebody's like, no, he's not. And I'm like, fuck you. This guy's not serious. Like, there's no way. I'm like, he's way, I mean, dude, really? And then I looked him up and I went to his posts, and it took me, I don't even know how long, probably 15 minutes of reading his posts to finally admit to myself that this dude was totally like dead serious. I was like, there's no way. Yeah.
Yeah. So somebody accused him of being a bibliophile, and he took it as being called a pedophile. And they were like, this means that you just like books, right?
Yeah. No, he doesn't. No.
He didn't understand that.
Grossly ignorant is not reading a lot. I mean, I don't know. Maybe you're just reading the wrong books. There's some I saw a Tucker Carlson book rolling around my Thanksgiving at my family's, not last year, but the year before. And that was like, I was like, oh, why? That's, yeah. So there definitely are books not worth reading. So,
yeah.
Maybe he's just reading those ones.
Well, so I'm kind of curious, what advice do you have for anybody that's kind of new to atheism? Because, we were discussing everything about books and everything for people that are questioning their faith, but I'm wondering now, what advice do you have for anybody that's just now coming into like the atheist, I guess, not really worldview, but the atheist persuasion?
Once you start identify it as an atheist and openly saying that you are, I think the best thing to do is to find community and to find other atheists like quick, because it can be lonely. I mean, for me, when I started to talk to people about it, and I just kind of mentioned it in passing, I had some people that were like, oh my God, I'm totally an atheist too, but I can't tell anybody. So there was, people like that, but then you also have people that basically just completely shit on you and may just throw you out of your life. So I would say the best thing to do would be to find a community. Twitter can be a little harsh. I think you gotta be very choosy. But I've actually found it very welcoming and supportive. For the vast majority of the atheists I've met on Twitter, I'm really glad to have met them. I got to say, that's made a huge difference in me being comfortable speaking out. And so, yeah, my advice would be to find community, find a free thinkers group. If you don't want to be, like I said, online is full of crap, so you have to be careful. But, there's plenty of free thinking groups, free thought groups and things like that, or even a convention. The two FFRF conventions I've been to, I've met a lot of really cool people. So,
well, yeah. So I'm kind of curious, how did you go about finding community? Did you immediately go to Twitter, or where did you start off?
Well, I started off because my kid's school really pissed me off, and they sent home a flyer. I started online with Facebook. I think the Friendly Atheist was my very first atheist follow. And then I followed, I found FFRF, and I was like, well, these guys seem like they're, on the up and up. And I think American Atheists and, those kind of stuff, Seth Andrews. And so I just kind of started looking at that, following that stuff. And then I got a flyer from my son's school. I think he was his elementary school. But anyway, it was from a church, and they were giving everybody in the school a free bike, but only if you attended this event. But they didn't actually say they were a church. They just had kind of a vague name. And so, of course, I looked it up, and I'm like, hey, fuckers, you're trying to send my kid to a church school and you're promising him a bike. And when he told me about it, I was like, that's probably for underprivileged kids. We're going to donate that bike. If you get that bike, we're going to donate it. And he was totally cool with that because he'd just gotten a brand new bike. So once I realized what it was, I was like, well, this isn't cool. And I messaged FFRF and I messaged ACLU. And this was very shortly after the election. So you can imagine ACLU was quite busy. They did get back to me, but they weren't in a position to do anything. FFRF, however, sent a letter to the district and got them to stop promoting that event. And once they did that, I became a member. Once I became a member and learn more about them is when I really felt like I wanted to support them. And then I had submitted an article. I also had an article published with Secular Nation, which is American Atheist Alliance, their publication. And so I thought, well, to hell, I'll submit one to FFRF, and they published it. And that was God is a jerk. And so then I went to the convention, and that was that. I met our chapter president. She's the one that said, hey, you got 2 other books. How fast can you write a 3rd one? And I was like, what? And so she kind of helped me come up with this concept of expose yourself. And so that was kind of how I found community. Now I try to support, she supported me the whole writing of the book, edited the book. And so I support FFRF and our local events as much as I can. So that was how I found community. And then it just, it kind of snowballs from there.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was going to ask you how you came to write for FFRF, but I guess you just sort of write articles and then you submit and see if they'll publish it?
Yeah, pretty much. I wrote, I wrote the Bible one, and I, of course, thought it was hilarious myself. And so I figured, well, maybe you'll like it. And then they published that one, and then I submitted another one, which was a little more serious. I try to keep things as light as possible, although I noticed that people have a hard time with nuance on Twitter, just saying.
Oh, yes, they do.
Oh, man. Sometimes I try to make a joke, and people are like, oh, I'm like, I wasn't serious, though, but now you're being really nice, and so I don't want to, point it out that I was just kidding. Or I didn't need, I poke fun at myself a lot. And sometimes people are like, hey, buck up, little camper. And I'm like, dude, no, I know I'm awesome. I'm just making fun of myself. That's all. So I just kind of threw it out there, and I kept publishing them. So.
Okay. No, and I can't wait to read your FFRF post, but like I said, I'm right in the middle of reading your Expose Yourself book. So, I get listening to it, not really reading, but yeah. So, but I encourage everybody to go and listen to Erin's books or read Erin's books. They're really good reads. But before we go, I did want to ask, hold on, I just had the question, but I forgot it. Hold on. So before we go, I did want to ask you, is there any last bits of advice that you can give for anybody that might be watching this, whether they're religious or atheist?
Only that knowledge is good, seeking knowledge, however you get there is good. And questioning your beliefs is, kind of scary because it might, open doors you weren't expecting to open. But I think that's a good thing. I think it's important to explore the world we live in and to take advantage of the time that we have now. One of the things I find really limiting about religion and even any type of spiritualism is the idea of an afterlife. And maybe there's some part of physics and part of our universe that we don't understand, and somehow we do go on after we die. However, I think that's highly unlikely, given the evidence we have. And I think the most important thing is to realize that the time we have is the time we have right now, and to make the most of it. And to not waste it, hoping that you're going to be sitting on a cloud with, grandma and the dog you had when you were 6. I think it's really important to focus on your life right now. And if you need to believe in God for whatever reason, then that's cool. But if it's, if it's not hurting anybody, then I'm pretty much cool with it. But I think a lot of times it really gives people a false sense of something that's not there, and you're not taking advantage of what is around us and what we have, just in our world. It's awesome. We don't need heaven. You can make it here if you try. If you have the power to control your your actions and your life. I think religion takes some of that control away. But once you grab it, you hang on to it, there's a lot of new things that open up.
Oh, yeah, I completely agree with you. So we're going to head out on that point. Thank you so much, Erin, for being with us today and talking to us about your journey from, religiosity to atheism. It was very interesting. I know a lot of people love hearing other people's journeys to their atheist position. So I know everybody's probably enjoyed our conversation, but everybody everybody needs to go down to the description right now and visit the Amazon links that we have for Erin's books and Erin's Twitter.
Which
I don't think you have a YouTube channel, do you?
I do kind of, but I don't. The only thing that's posted on it is my interview on my website, erinlouis.com. It has links to all my books. I actually have a merchandise page, if you can see my shirt.
Yeah.
And that also has links to other podcasts, YouTubes, and all my articles and blog posts are all on my website too. So it's kind of a one-stop place. But of course, everything's on Amazon too. And all my books are available in Audible, Kindle, and paperback.
Awesome. Well, we got all of those links down in the description. Definitely go check her out. Support her if you like the things that you've heard here in this interview today. And I guess we'll see you heathens later. Don't forget to stand up and use your voice. We'll see you guys later.